Hey everybody, Jake here from Bearded Gear, and I've got a full-ish review to do for you. Full-ish because I haven't carried really or cut with this knife. I've slipped it into a pocket, I've cut a little bit of paper, and that's it. I haven't done my typical things with this knife prior to filming this review, so it's, I don't know, it's not a first impressions either, a full impressions. It's not my personal knife, it's a loaner. This is one that Liong Mah actually sent to a couple of my buddies. It's going after me to EDC Gear Reviews, so you'll see it over there as well. But I'm under the impression that we're not really supposed to do anything to harm this knife. I think it's just kind of one of those check out and send it back type of deals. So that's why I've been very gentle with it. I've played with it at my desk quite a bit. And like I said, I've slipped it into, I think actually two different pockets. Yeah, once in jeans, once in shorts, to kind of feel how it felt in those. And yeah, I've played with it a lot. I've cut a little bit of paper. So that's where I'm coming from on this one. This is the Liong Mah L1. And it's not a knife that really I would have picked on my own. But when my buddies were like, hey, do you want to check it out? I was like, sure. This came by way of Chris over at Grady's Gear, so appreciate him as always. And I was intrigued to check it out. It's not like I was totally disinterested in this knife, but on paper, although I thought, of course, it will be very nice. It's a Riat built integral bolster lock, like S90V steel, cool, nice, like kind of upper echelon Riat build. It just doesn't jump out at me. Like seeing it in pictures and even in video, it was like, it seems fine. And at this point, I tend to go for knives that excite me for some reason. So anyway, it's here. I've enjoyed checking it out. Let's talk about it. I guess if you want like my hot take right from the beginning, I personally won't be buying one of these for myself. It just, even at the end of this, after getting to handle it, check it out, it still doesn't really excite me. But that doesn't mean there aren't people out there who would excite. So I want to talk about ergos. I can't really talk deeply about carry or cutting, but I can talk about ergos and action pretty heavily here. So I'm going to do that and just kind of share some thoughts about it. So real quick, let's go over construction. I know I already mentioned most of it, but it's an integral bolster lock, kind of a frame lock with a bolster over it. So integral frame, you'll see this is all milled from one single piece of titanium. Oftentimes integrals are just left all titanium. In this case, we have scales set over the integral frame, which is kind of cool. So you've got this kind of marbled carbon fiber and really nice Liong Mah style pivots, flipper tab. You got a little notch up here, which you can middle finger flick. We're going to talk about that. We've got a titanium clip with a ceramic ball. And we do have a hardened steel insert, and the blade is S90V, which I think is a really cool choice for a knife like this. S90V is an edge retention focused steel. It's not a toughness focused steel, but this isn't a knife that people are going to be doing toughness focused tasks with, I imagine. Seems kind of gentlemanly. It's a little bit slim. So you've got that. All right, so that's what we're working with materials wise. A little shredded or marbled carbon fiber, whatever you want to call it. Bunch of titanium, some S90V, and a ceramic ball for that clip, and ceramic bearings around the pivot. So let's go over what I can talk about confidently. Ergos. These ergos are phenomenal. It's a super neutral handle. Everything is contoured really well. It's stupid comfortable. Hammer grip, saber grip, both comfortable. Draw cut, super comfortable. Reverse grip, very comfortable. Reverse grip, draw cut, very comfortable. Every grip I put this knife in, it's very comfortable. The clip is nice and rounded. It's not hot spotty. The scales are nice and rounded. They're not hot spotty. The flipper tab isn't poking me while the knife is deployed. There's jimping on the spine, but the jimping is far from too aggressive. It's like pretty non-aggressive at the end of the day, so it hasn't bugged me at all. It's just a very comfortable knife for me to hold in hand. I wear men's medium gloves, but I fill them out real well. And yeah, this knife fits my hand really, really well. If you had bigger hands than mine, you might find that it's just a little, like you're hanging off a little bit. That might be a little uncomfortable, but I don't know. Even then, it's so neutral. I imagine you'd probably kind of be fine. So yeah, ergos are very good. I really like the way this knife feels in hand. Action. It feels like a very nice Riat flipper. I will say it's not like guillotine drop shutty like some knives that come from Riat are. That is what it is, but as the flipper action goes, very snappy, makes a nice sound, just snicks right out of there. I like that. You also have these little fullers on both sides of the blade. So whether you're lefty or righty, I imagine this would work, but you can get your fingernail in there and middle finger flick it, which of course I appreciate. If you know me, you know I love to middle finger flick things. So that's nice. That's a nice little touch that even with such a limited space, they put this fuller in there. When the knife is closed, there's not a ton of clearance because this knife stays really slim closed. So the fact that that's put in there, I love that touch. That is a great touch in my opinion. I wish more flipper only knives that have this much blade sticking out would take a note and put a little something there so that those of us who like to use our middle finger to open a knife could have the option. That's brilliant. I like that tiny little fuller that just works to get the nail in and make it work. It's honestly a lot like a nail nick. I suppose you could even use it to open it like grandpa's knife and just pull the blade open that way. So there you go. I think I already mentioned too. On closure, not super drop shutty. I mean, it's smooth. It'll come down with some coaxing, but most of the time I'm just kind of using my thumb to close the knife because seems easier, so that works. Yeah, it's not exciting to close, but it's fairly exciting to open. It's snappy. And as integrals go, I should mention as well, I'm impressed that the detent is this good because the more I've handled more and more integrals over time, the more I've found that a commonality between a lot of them is a weak detent, and I don't like weak detents. I prefer detents on the stiffer side, and so I like that this is an integral that if I was blindfolded and I wasn't like feeling this back edge of the knife and I just flicked it, I wouldn't guess it's an integral. I'd guess it's a nice, well-designed pivot on a regular folder where they don't have such a hard time dealing with a lock bar. Integrals, as you can imagine, because they don't come apart, be a little harder to bend things and work on things. So I like that this is so well done. I imagine part of that is probably just the way that they've set up this the hardened insert as well, because it's done really well on there. I like the way that looks, and it seems really effective to me. Lockup is great. So yeah, functionally, I like this knife. Cutting performance, it's all I've done is put it through a tiny bit of paper, so the edge that came on it is really nice. It cut well. It feels consistent with Riat factory edges that I've experienced. They put a good edge on. The geometry, it's not super thick. Definitely not an overly thin blade stock either. Kind of rides the middle. And, I mean, it's a full flat grind, but it's not a very tall blade. So it's just not like, I don't know, kind of like the blade stock. It's not super thin behind the edge. It's not super thick either. Kind of right down the middle there. I'd put it a hair more on the thick side than on the thin side. But, I don't know. It's not a bad cutting geometry. It's just not like an absolute laser beam either. Yeah, I don't know. Being in kind of the gentleman's knife category, I almost feel like this is the knife category that like cutting geometry almost matters the least in, the more I think about it. Not trying to make an excuse for this not being amazing, but it's also not bad cutting geometry either. I just think it kind of makes sense for this range. Like, it's a nice blade. It will absolutely work. It's just not going to be like a shining example of incredible geometry. So what are you going to be doing with a knife like this that requires incredible cutting geometry? I'm sure some people are like, I have an L1 and I use it like crazy. It's my favorite knife to carry, blah, 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 blah. But like, I don't know. I guess I don't even know where I'm going with this. It just kind of rides down the middle of being like, it's fine. The cutting geometry based on the angles that we're working with here and what I can feel, it's not crazy thin, not crazy slicey, but it's fine. Carry, I've put it into a couple of pockets like I mentioned. I like that on a lot of Liong's clips, when he uses a titanium milled clip, it still carries fairly deep. Really, there's only about that much of the knife sticking out of your pocket. I like that because too many knives leave like that much knife sticking out of your pocket, and that's a pet peeve of mine. As a titanium milled clip goes, this one carries quite well. I can say that also with a little more confidence because it's really similar to this one. So this is a field duty EDC, but even though I haven't carried this one out of the house, I've just slipped it into a couple of pockets, it feels identical to slipping that knife in and out of pocket. And like standing up and moving around a little with this in my pocket, it's also light, it's also slim. It's not crazy light, but it doesn't feel heavy in pocket. It's very slim. The flipper tab isn't an issue. Like, this knife is going to carry slim and smooth, and everything about it is going to be nice. So carry, I imagine, is quite good, even though, again, I'm not like super experienced because I didn't carry it anywhere. So yeah, where does that leave us? I find this knife to be really, really nice. I like the steel choice a lot. I find the action fun. I love that you get the little Easter egg of a tiny fuller that you can middle finger flick. Again, I commend that. I think that's awesome that on a slim little flipper, that little touch was put to consider people like me who like to middle finger flick things. Yeah, it's well done. The fit and finish is great. Typical Reat, fantastic quality. I like the construction, being an integral that has the scales put on it to make it kind of a bolster lock. I think that's a little bit unique in the realm of integrals, at least in the ones that I've experienced. It's all put together really well, so I like it. I just don't find myself at the end of the day, like, compared to the other knives that I own and the other knives that are out there, I'm not like, ooh, that's one I've got to have. But I also, in general, am not typically super drawn to knives that are just like simple lines. I guess there are some exceptions. There are some that draw me in, but this knife has really simple lines. It's not overly complex. It doesn't have a thumb ramp that adds drama to the blade. There's no swedge. It's not doing crazy stuff up there. It's not doing crazy stuff back here, really. It looks almost kind of like a blend of a traditional knife with a modern knife in an interesting way, but it's just not like captivating to me personally, and it's not inexpensive. So it's not one that I see myself just like on a whim feeling like I need to have. So I don't know. But again, as integrals go, another thing that just popped in my mind that I should reiterate, this detent is impressive for an integral. Like, lately I've felt a little bit jaded about some integrals because I just worry that the detent is going to be softer than I like, because more often than not that seems to be the case. But here it is not the case. And for it to be a flipper too, like integrals that you just middle finger flick, you can get away with a lighter detent when you're just middle finger flicking a knife because that motion seems to be more generous in that department. But on a flipper, man, a light detent kills a knife. And on this, it's just really done well. So yeah, there's a lot of great happening here. I probably come across as prissy for not like personally liking it as much as I maybe should for how much I'm talking up a lot of things about it. But I'm just trying to be fair and honest here that like it's also possible for a knife to be objectively very, very nice and incredibly well made and done well, and for me to not feel like I need to have it. That's kind of the way it goes sometimes. So I guess that's that. This knife is going to be going next to Tyler over at EDC Gear Reviews. So if you want to see more about it, you can check it out on his channel. I assume, since it came from Chris, Grady's Gear, that he also reviewed it. In fact, I'm pretty sure I watched his review. They all blend together at a certain point. I have too many friends who make videos at this point, so I see too much knife YouTube. But yeah, you can look on his channel for the review. Probably Kevin and Kyle, Left EDC and D2M Knives and Gear, have reviewed it as well. If not, I imagine they will. And yeah, so plenty of content out there about this knife. You can watch some other people's take as well. But I appreciate Liong for putting it out there for us to check out, and Chris for sending it along to me. So anyway, thanks guys. I appreciate it. We'll see you on the next one.